Yeah.
that means all the details are changeable.
I'm taking notes if you hear some ruffling, so just, okay,
Sure,
gotcha.
no problem.
Yep.
So that means the premium can change. That means the health deductible, the drug deductible, the office visit copay, the inpatient hospitalization per day charge. That can change. All of those details are changeable every year.
Okay.
And this is what we were highlighting before, that the competition is fierce.
Yeah.
And so these differences can matter depending on the household of whether or not they need to see specialists only, for example. Now, the specialist office visit charge can be more or less than another plan's. So, but the main thing to take away, at least for our purposes today, is that this is annual contract. The details can be changed. The second one is the idea of network.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's every variety of type of network setup here. And these differences are declining, meaning that some require you to use a primary care physician. Some do not. Some require referral. Some do not. Some allow you to use out-of-network providers. Some do not. And so nevertheless, this is the important part. So let's just take an easy example. Let's say you're in your community and you never leave town, or you stay in your local area and everything is available.
Yeah.
The idea of referral, the idea of going out of the network may not be that important.
Right, exactly.
And therefore, you may choose to save money on premium and co-pays and deductibles because the idea of going out of network is just not a determining factor. For the person who's that person's cloned brother in Virginia in another location, that whole set of circumstances can be different. So as a result, they would choose, or it would be more logical to choose a different type of Medicare Advantage plan.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So these are the main, and what ends up happening. Oh, one last detail about Medicare Advantage, which makes it absolutely vital. Every Medicare Advantage plan has an annual out-of-pocket maximum. There's a limit. The issue here, Josh, and remember I was saying that people don't understand how Medicare works?
Yeah.
Is that sometimes people think they have the red, white, and blue card alone, and that is a complete solution.
Right. Oh, I know that.
The red, white, and blue card by itself has no out-of-pocket maximum.
Yeah.
So you can understand my point here, which is there are certain Medicare Advantage plans that do not cost extra premium. So you have to deal with network and you have to deal with deductible and those things. But at least then you know, because of the annual out-of-pocket maximum, that there's a limit to your downside. And we talked about limiting the financial downside.
So this is actually critically important. And I just want to reiterate, Jay, is that just having Medicare A and B alone, you are on the hook for an unlimited cost potentially. Is that
correct?
Okay. So just having Medicare, folks, just because you have Medicare Part A, Part B, does not limit your downside risk in the least because you have a unlimited amount that it could cost you.
Right. If you go to the hospital, there's a deductible per medical event. If you have 20% under Part B, 20% of $100 is fine. 20% of $100,000 is not fine.
Yes.
Right. So, and in contrast, Medicare Advantage plans, even those with a $0 monthly premium, they will have an annual out-of-pocket maximum.
And you know for a fact this is your downside risk if you have one of those programs.
Exactly. And Medicare Advantage plans cannot get federal approval if they do not have this out-of-pocket maximum limit.
Ah, there you go.
Period. So it is why I say that Medicare is really stable in its current form, meaning that all the plans and the consumer rights here have substantial protections that the sellers dare not violate.
Yeah. Well, not if they want to stay in the business, that's for sure.
Precisely. Not for a market of 58 million and 10,000 people, new entrants a day. No. Right? The practical reality is that would not be it would not be wise. And they know it. I'm not saying anything.
No, I absolutely. I mean, if you're an insurance company and you see you see where the puck is going, to quote Wayne Gretzky, not where the puck is. Hey, Jay, does Medigap, do they have out-of-pocket maximums too if you have a Medigap policy?
Well, remember that Medigap, you don't have it's covered in full.
So there's no cost to you other than your premium whatsoever.
For example, one plan, which is Plan F, there's zero out-of-pocket cost irrespective of medical. So the idea of annual out-of-pocket maximum is the sum of your 12 premiums.
And that's it. You know for a fact with Medigap too that you have no, and this is the F. And I want to ask about the difference between F. I think it's what F, H, and G. We'll hold that for just a sec. But you know for a fact that you will not be destitute if you have Medigap plan or a Medicare Advantage because of a health issue if you're 72 years old, for instance.
Right. And my point here is, as long as you're receiving medical services that are approved by Medicare,
understood. Yep, good point.
You know, within some of these, you know, we cannot have, you know, voodoo doctor practicing and charging you. That you're not going to get a lot of luck being covered by Medicare or any of the extras.
Jay, you just ruined it for me.
So I've just bankrupted my twin brother, by the way. But anyway, the reality is that you're absolutely right, which is that these plans limit the downside to such a degree that you can at least define what financial risk you're taking.
Yes.
And this goes back to our commonality about being financial planners.
Right.
Which is so you can understand. Now you'd ask this actually very complicated question of how do I get into this, or why is this my starting spot. You can take all our comments and our conversation as a whole. Consumer rights in huge amounts on the most important topic.
Yeah.
As long as they understand the ramifications. And then the consumers get to choose with, you know, protected by federal regulations and competitive reality.
And just for, you know, the insurance companies make a profit. How do we know? Because they're all competing to be part of the solution for those 55 odd million people and the 10,000 each day. So it's not like, I don't know. I frustrate a little bit where people say Medicare is like socialism. I say, well, it's not, because with socialism, the insurance companies would not be there making profits and trying to get into the market if the government did not allow them to make a profit, for heaven's sake. You see,
it's even more than that. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said, Josh. And in addition to that, there is a limit to the profitability. Meaning the federal government has something called medical loss ratio. They must spend 80 to 85% of all collective premiums on claims.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they have to issue refund. And I know this works because my mother, who is on Medicare, has received refunds.
Ah.
And when she doesn't, she complains to me about it. so I know it works.
That means they're doing what they're supposed to.
Exactly. That is true. Absolutely.
And it's funny too, because it's not like the insurance companies aren't beating down the door to get in the system. So if these insurance companies, if they didn't think there's profits to be made, they would not enter the system. I always chuckle at the. Anyway, all right. I don't want to get too philosophical with it here, Jay. It kind of cracks me up. Just a personal preference, and this might be too risky for you to answer, and that might not be the right word. Medigap or Medicare Advantage? Is there one that you say most? And I hate to put you on a limb here, but what do you think is the preference for, 51% of the population versus 49%? Do you have any thoughts on that, or is that too specific without knowing the unique situation of each individual person? Does that make sense what I'm asking you?
It is too specific.
Okay.
And obviously I have limits on regulation. So I would leave it. I would refer back to when you said, can you explain what the differences are?
Okay.
Because every person will value those two sets of differences differently.
Okay.
Right. For some persons, notably, Social Security is the only source of income. So as a result, and they're in perfect health. Let's just call this person. Okay.
Right.
Nowhere in Maximize Your Medicare did I say pay premium and don't eat. You will never find that in my book. Never. Right? There's the practical reality. Some person may say, I need this $50 difference a month because my grandchild is on the brink of creating the next Facebook.
Yes.
Who am I to value judge what that person should do with that $50? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my job, in its entirety, is to make sure the person understands what risks they are taking that are inherent in those choices.
Yes.
Because I will tell you one thing about Medigap, which we did not mention. You cannot necessarily easily switch from Medigap to Medicare Advantage. I told you that we spoke about very good consumer protections. But in most locations in the country, you cannot simply pick up the phone at 75 years old and say, Jay, can you locate, I'm on Medicare Advantage, I've been there since I was 65, but now I need to change to Medigap. At that point, the sellers will have the right, in most instances, to ask medical questions. And they do have the right to deny your application at that point. So these are these things that are in the book, which is to say you need to consider that.
Yeah.
In the sense of some persons are really forward looking. They think, okay, I'm going to live till I'm 95 and I'll give up the extra cost today for the stability when I'm 95. That type of thing. Some other person said, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to 95. All of my siblings and extended family did not make it to that age.
Right.
Therefore, I value that dollar today much higher than others.
Gotcha. Okay.
You see, those are personal, not a spot to really say, definitely Medigap, definitely Medicare Advantage. I'm sure you can understand.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How about just from premium perspective?
Sure.
Is there is there a big range?
So I can give you that.
Okay.
So Medicare Advantage, yes, there are plans at zero. You do have to be enrolled in Part A and Part B.
Okay.
In fact, there are certain Medicare Advantage plans that if you are a payer of Part A and Part B, that you get an extra amount into your Social Security check. That exists.
Okay.
Where the premium is actually then effectively negative.
Oh,
in other words, you don't get the full 134 deducted from your Medicare premium. That can happen. But that's not that many cases. Almost every state has a Medicare Advantage plan that is no premium, zero. The issue is that at the high end, there are plans upwards of the high $100 a month, over $200 a month. Okay. In Maximize Your Medicare, and not really, beyond the scope of this call, is a question of whether or not those high sticker price plans are worth it. And the reason I'm going to say that is because I'll describe Medigap.
Mm-hmm.
So the range is nationwide, and this is not going to be fully accurate, but this will give you a ballpark sense.
Yeah. All right.
So the most popular plan is Plan F, and coming up quickly into second place here is Plan G. To give you an idea there, for a female turning 65, that plan, depending on household discount, depending on location, can be low as $100 a month and lower than that.
Yeah. Okay.
And then on the high end, high cost locations, and they'll know where you are in the state of Florida. Right, absolutely. 40% higher.
Okay. Gotcha. That's
so you can see it, demographics, cost of living, you add it up. So fairly, but still competitive within the location. So that gives you an idea as far as price. And now you can see why I made the point about Medicare Advantage, is that sometimes some people out in the world want a Medicare Advantage plan, and that's fine, but then they end up selecting the plan costing $250 a month when there's Medigap at $100 a month.
I gotcha.
So they've paid more, and they have moving parts that change every year. And if they tried to switch later, they may not be able to. So I'm sure from your financial planning, background, this is kind of describes my general principle is, let's not give away free options.
Yes.
Because when you're on Medigap, you do have the free option to switch to Medicare Advantage. When you are on Medicare Advantage, you do not have that same.
That's huge.
Option.
I remember in one of your podcasts you mentioned that's huge right there. Huge in my opinion.
And from a financial planning, just from financial markets background, you can understand that option alone should be assigned a price.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And so some of that premium difference is explained by that option itself. Absolutely. And so now you can understand my convergence of Medicare and et cetera, all of these things that we've talked about in financial markets. And actually, the reasoning is very similar to the one that financial planners, what you're deploying every day when you're looking at mutual funds, et cetera, comparing portfolios, et cetera. Very related.
Your background being in derivatives too, as we were talking about before, because that is literally it's an option contract. You're buying an option to put it to somebody. It's like a put option. I'm going to put it to you, insurance company, if I need this, that, and the other, and the insurance company will take a higher premium, to give you the right to put it to them. That's exactly what the Medigap sounds like to me.
And in fact, you could say that entire thing for health insurance.
Absolutely.
You're buying a put option on your household net worth.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're paying a premium. That's a put option.
That's and it might not come to fruition. And the thing you are out then is the cost of the put option. But if it does come to fruition, you're going to be a happy, well, not going to be happy, but you'll be taken care of. That's man, that's a great way to put that. And again, it's interesting that very, very few people, financial planners, even dip their toe into healthcare, in terms of Medicare and stuff. And I'm not saying they should do it haphazardly. Don't get me wrong, but given how you phrase it like that, Jay, it just it's like a light bulb going off over my head. I'm like, it completely makes sense to me. I'm putting it to the insurance company, and millions of other people are too. And the insurance company is deriving a small profit off those millions of people, whether put option premiums, and some people they're going to have to pay out. But their actuaries will say the vast, some amount they won't, and that will be their small profit that they make. That's
exactly. How's that different than when someone figures out the price of a put on 100 shares of Google?
Yeah,
the same.
All right, so I only have an hour on my stuff. My free software is Twisted Wave. So. Where we all right, so I got a question for you. So let's just say I'm 64 years old. I don't know the first thing. I just see all this stuff on TV, blah, blah, blah. And this guy, Jay, sounds like a good guy. I live in Nevada. Let's just say that, for example. Is there a way that this, guy or lady can talk to you and, for obviously is, to pay a fee, but where they can say, can you help me, choose the best options for me for where I am in Nevada? And you can kind of give them the litany of what they should be looking at. Is that something you can help for people?
Sure. And that's why I tell people about the newsletter. They can, from these podcasts, and that's why I'm out in public.
Yeah.
I know it's very difficult in everything. It's hard to tell who knows what. I get it. You're right. And you know this as well. And we have a complicated society now.
Yep.
Email, phone call, Maximize Your Medicare is out there everywhere. Those all have connection points. We will respond to everyone. And as a result, we would never charge in advance without you knowing on anything. We are not charging for, if you called any agent and said, I want this plan, can you help me sign up? Well, there's no work involved. There is no cost.
Right. Okay.
There cannot be a cost. Okay. Some people, but most people, many, do have some other set of situations that need complicated vetting, because it is complicated. We've talked about the general case. Complicated cases exist.
Yeah.
Married couple, one person above 65, one person below.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And still full-time working. It is not a slam dunk that you would just stay with your employer-based plan. It is not. So, and that will change wildly. So that does take work.
Yeah.
But yes, you can go to the website. There are all sorts of links on how to reach me. There are contact forms there. That type of thing, not going to be a problem. And, we are used to the exercise. So we even have clients as far away as Hawaii.
Okay. All right. So it doesn't matter if they're in Michigan or Georgia, they can call anytime. You set an appointment and you can kind of go through their options. Jay, actually got to get you to talk about the case of Bell, before we hang up here. I that was incredibly interesting to me. And I just find it, and again, in terms of the value that I'll just say you can add, is it actually mind-boggling, actually. So would you just go over that kind of the cliff notes or the summary?
Actually, why don't you tell me what you got from it, and then why don't I compare from there? Because I have so many cases that are the 65 podcasts and newsletters for 3 years.
That's right. That's funny to say that, because I do a lot of, yes, I have this case, and people are like, oh, remember that case? Like, all right. So Belle was like a 23-year-old girl, or young lady, I should say. Her dad was 68. And I think he had a small business, and the mom was getting ready to enroll in Medicare. Is that sparking? And something about the dad not going on Medicare. Does that mean, are you following where I'm going with that? I can't remember the exact scenario anymore.
I do.
But okay.
So these kinds of things happen where, and I'm not sure if my point is going to be what you want to glean from it. So first of all, for persons who have senior age parents and they feel responsible,
Mm-hmm.
they need to understand Medicare looks the same than other health insurance. It doesn't work the same. And while persons like me can and have and will bend over backwards to protect clients and what they can do, that does not mean that we can. This is not something where we can cross lines of federal regulation. If you've missed a payment, for example, for 2 months, it's very difficult to get back enrolled. And then what would end up happening is, the financial ramifications of doing so would be enormous.
Yeah.
Now, this particular person has another parent where they're younger, and basically what can end up happening is they choose the Medicare person inefficiently, and their overall costs are too high.
Yeah.
There can be situations where if the younger parent in this instance is actually eligible for Medicare in advance because of Social Security disability, you can get enrolled in Medicare if you do meet certain terms and conditions. So these numbers of different circumstances are all over the map. It is the risk of actually me having this book.
Yeah.
That somebody reads one of the episodes of This Happens. I have little case studies called This Happens inside.
Okay. Good.
But it's really as exercises to see that every individual situation is different.
Yeah.
And the circumstances can change. And when you take all those into consideration, it is difficult to navigate by yourself. I'm the seller, so you could say, Jay, you're just trying to sell something.
Right.
But I write in This Happens because then people can look at it and never call me, but they still got some very valuable information for their financial retirement. Absolutely.
And I'm going to put a link to that episode too, because at the end of the day, your knowledge of health planning, health insurance planning, not even just Medicare, but it's kind of like what I talk with taxes. Like, some people say I'm going to be a 50-50 investor, 50% stocks, bonds, and all three account. It's just not tax efficient. So I come up and say, let's do this, that, and the other. And you can kind of see the light bulb going over the guy's head or the lady's head. They say, oh, that makes sense. But they didn't see it before. And the same thing when an expert can come in with experience and say, look, you should go on Medicare, but you should go on your company's plan so you can bring your daughter on, and that will save you $20,000. Whatever it was, I can't remember. But
exactly.
Now the question is that a value add? Well, inherently it is a huge value add that I hate to say it, but a lot of people are not going to get on their own because they just don't take the time. And the reason they don't take the time because it's not something that anyone wants to do other than a professional who, for some reason, Jay has taken the time to just dive into this. And I have on I love the tax stuff. I could talk about the tax stuff all day long, and I enjoy it immensely. The vast majority of people don't. They want to do plumbing or they want to do, I don't know, sports analysis, whatever it is. And I get that. But all right, so let's wrap up. I want to make sure. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, in that, back to Bell just for a moment, which is, they gave away, and I can tell you where they are now, is, thankfully, she's still in good health.
Yes.
That wasn't assured.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you.
And not at a much lower price than would have been accessed by her privately. So you can understand the painful thing is that, in financial marketing and financial planning, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that was the right configuration on the way in. Right. So what ends up happening is we get a lot of that in what we do. That's its nature. And then we can also have the other case where person has 3 types of cancer, unfortunately, and they have 0 out-of-pocket costs, which spares their spouse and their extended family the extra financial duress on top of what already exists, which is the emotional stress.
And that's the downside risk mitigation that is so, because you're losing your loved one. The last thing we need is an anvil of financial bills over your head, because either you didn't take the time to figure this out, or you just got bad advice. I mean, one of those two things. And I just, losing a loved one and being financially destitute at the same time is just not a good place to be.
That's even the volatility of it. So back to financial market speak, right? Which is like, I don't know what works. I don't know what the coverage is. I don't know what the ramifications are. When it happens on top of the emotion